show the class.
Show and tell, huh?
Show and tell.
Can I use you, my turn?
You're making it weird, dude.
All right, we're live.
Okay, so let's bring it back to our conversation about this sugya, about the wearing kilayim, if you remember, a mixture of wool and linen, and putting this on, using this to clothe the dead, right? So yeah.
What about like nylon or something?
No, just wool and linen. Yeah. So we had this sugi in the Gemara, which we actually dived into yesterday and learned it. Let's see, we're going to take this from the top of page 453. So what do we say? Let's just read it again, because it was a little complicated. We want to do a proper review. So actually take it from the Os Dalet, if you please follow along inside, page 453, the bottom of the first column. And it says, the Sugya says like this: Mitzvahs betelis lasid lavo. Where do we learn this idea that mitzvahs are nullified in the future? So, quote from the Gemara: Beged shabed bo kilayim. If you make a garment out of kilayim, you are allowed to make a garment for the dead. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef learns from here. Zos omeretz mitzvahs betelis lasid lavo. We can learn from here. You're not going to have mitzvahs in the future, right? Because the idea is the person's going to get up and he's going to be wearing kilayim and basically saying it's not a problem because there's no mitzvahs. Yes? Amar Rabbi, Amar le Abai, V'it Temimei Rav Dimi. Some people, Rabbi said, maybe Rav Dimi said, and they said, yeah, in the name of Rabbi Mani or Rabbi Yanai, they said, no, this is only when you eulogize him. That's when you can dress him up in kilayim. But when you're actually going to go and bury him, you can't put him in kilayim. Why? Seemingly, this is a contradiction to this concept. We're saying because there are mitzvahs after life. I mean, after the person, rises from the dead, and therefore you can't be in an Easter garment like this. So the response, which is supposed to be a backing up of Rav Yosef now, right? We're coming back and defending Rav Yosef that mitzvahs are in fact batal in the future. It says Amar le lav itmar ala Rabbi Amar Rabbi Yochanan afil kovro. But wait, Rabbi Yochanan said no, you can even bury him in these garments. Not just eulogize him, but you can even bury him in these garments, right? So what would that mean? Rabbi Yochanan seems to be defending Rav Yosef that their mitzvahs are batal in the future because you can wear the garments even in the burial. So far, is everyone paying attention? Yeah? So then we said something confusing. Why, after we mentioned this position of Rabbi Yochanan, which seems to defend Rabbi Yosef, we say Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning. What's the reasoning, who remembers, what's the reasoning Rabbi Yochanan says you can do this?
Because the guy is dead and he doesn't have to do mitzvahs.
Exactly. He says, "B'meisim chavshi." Learns from the pasuk, when you're dead, you're free from the mitzvahs. Since you're dead, you're from the. And we said, similarly, this doesn't make any sense. Since that's the reason. How does this help, basically, of the case of Rav Yosef, who says that you're allowed to wear it because there's no mitzvahs in the future. Rabbi Yochanan's time, where he says it's permissible to be wearing these things, is when the person is dead. How is that supposed to be a defense for the position of Rabbi Yosef, who's saying that you can wear them even when you wake up from the dead? Right? So even though we brought Rabbi Yochanan as a defense for Rabbi Yosef, the reason that he gives winds up basically taking him out of the whole conversation, actually, of whether mitzvahs are batal in the future, because he says that you can bury in these clothes because of the time of when the guy's dead, which isn't even really addressing the conversation of mitzvahs betelus lasid lavo or not. Yes?
Is there a reason,
Okay.
Is there a reason brought for why one would not allow you to wear the garments when you're dead? Someone?
When you're actually dead?
Like the opinion says that you can't bury them with the garments, but you can eulogize them with the garments.
Right.
What's the reasoning for that?
Because seemingly it's because you're going to wake up with them on.
So that opinion would hold that mitzvahs would not be beteles, lasid lavo?
If you can't bury in the dead,
Yeah.
because he's going to wake up with his garments on, which is basically what Abai is coming back and saying, right? Yeah, the problem is it's because there's mitzvahs in the future, so you can't bury him.
But maybe just like there's another reason for Rabbi Yochanan, there's another reason for Abai. It doesn't have to do with waking up.
except that he says, from here we see mitzvahs are batal in the future,
Oh,
right? And Abaye says, no, you can only eulogize. You can't bury.
So he's Badavka arguing.
He's arguing with Rabbi Yosef. Yeah, that's the argument. And then we try and bring a proof for him from Rabbi Yochanan, and it sort of is supposed to, the Gemara thinks it's a proof, but the Rebbe is pointing out that really falls short because it doesn't even address the conversation.
Why would they bring Rabbi Yochanan then if he doesn't even address the argument at all? Like, no one's disagreeing.
First of all, they bring him in order to respond to the argument because basically he says you can even bury them. And what's confusing is the Gemara's like sort of continuation. That's what, in other words, you're right. That's what the Rebbe is pointing out. How is this an answer? But the Gemara considers an answer. The Rebbe is going to try and explain why this is nonetheless an answer, right?
Outside the context of the resurrection, is there a point to Rabbi Yochanan's statement? Like, is there an argument that says that even when you're going to be buried, you should not wear shatnez? No, not when you're dead, seemingly. So why would because everyone agrees you can wear them for eulogy, which means at the time of the person's dead, it's fine.
The statement
All right.
seems to be a bit pointless because no one would disagree that dead people are obligated. Like, no one says that dead people are obligated to do mitzvahs.
What's the question?
That is our question. You got it. Okay, so od ve'ikr, right? So what's furthermore and what's mainly, right? Sugya, but it gets a little bit more complicated before we resolve it, but stay with us. There's another conversation about the resurrection that takes place in the Gemara of Sanhedrin. And there, we're going to find our very own Rabbi Yochanan, and what does he say? Am Rabbi Yochanan, minayin l'tchias ha-mesim min Torah. How do you know there is such a thing as tchias ha-mesim from the Torah? Where do we know from the Torah dead will rise? It's kind of an important one. Shenemar, because it says in Parshas Korach, we just learned about it, Nesatim imenu es trumas Hashem la'aron HaKohen. Right? Amongst the gifts of the kahuna, which were promised as a result of Korach's rebellion, right? One of the gifts, it says, you shall give the truma to Aaron the Kohen. So this is a promise for all generations that the Kohanim get their gifts, right? So why does he mention Aaron HaKohen? It should have just said give the gifts to the Kohanim. The fact that he mentions you're going to give the gifts to Aaron HaKohen, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ki Aaron liolam kayam? Is Aaron going to live forever? That you're going to continuously give these gifts to Aaron HaKohen? Halo lo nichnas Eretz Yisrael? Didn't he not even come into Eretz Yisrael with them? Shenosen lo truma? That you're going to give him truma? There wasn't even truma in the desert. So why did he say you're going to give these gifts to Aaron? It wasn't even shaykh to Aaron. That's a good question. From here we learn Aaron will come back to life and we're going to give him truma. Right? There's no other reason for Aaron to be in that pasuk. He was not shaykh to be given the gift of truma. Only in Eretz Yisrael and only when the dead will rise. So from here we learn from the Torah there's a concept of the Tchias HaMesim.
Aren't there like prophecies that say that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim?
The prophecies are great, but we want to learn from the Torah, right? This is literally a pasuk in Torah which tells. There's another one, by the way. It says Az Yashir Moshe, right? Rashi also says over there. Then Moshe will sing, right? Why does it say in the future he'll sing? Because from here we learn that also there's Tchias HaMesim from the Torah. There's a few places where the Torah basically. What's that?
What was the first one you mentioned in the Torah?
The first one we mentioned.
Aaron.
Aaron. That we're going to give truma to Aaron. Right? Even though he didn't come into the land, when are we going to give him truma? When he rises from the dead. Okay, so now we've got a situation here. I'm not expecting you guys to realize like the difficulty we just brought out, but who's going to explain it now? It should kind of be obvious. From here we see that Rabbi Yochanan she'ein mitzvahs b'teos lasi lavo. Right? There's truma, right? There's mitzvahs. You're going to have to do mitzvahs with this dead person that arose. So we're saying that according to Rabbi Yochanan, who remember a moment ago we just thought we were bringing as a proof for Rabbi Yosef that mitzvahs are batul in the future, he was the one who said no, you can even bury him because it was brought as a support for Rabbi Yosef, who said there's no more mitzvahs in the future. If you go look at Rabbi Yochanan's actual opinion, whether there's mitzvahs in the future or not, he's the one that learns that there's such a thing as Tchias HaMesim. And how does he learn it? Because there's mitzvahs we're going to do with Aaron in the future. So he doesn't even seemingly hold. This is a greater difficulty than you even came up with, right? The previous question was, it seems like he's sort of a non sequitur when he gives his answer. It's not connected to the train we were on. Now it's even more so. Why are you bringing Rabbi Yochanan as a support of Rabbi Yosef? Seemingly Rabbi Yochanan holds the opposite of Rabbi Yosef, that there is mitzvahs in the future.
And at the same time, you can
But just before we get at the same time, you following the line of thought here? Does anyone need to repeat that? I'll be happy to. Unless you understand.
basically it says clear that
Repeat?
No, I'm good.
You got it?
So just to clarify, he holds that there are mitzvahs in the future, but also that you can bury someone.
yes.
They're just he's basically saying the mitzvahs are going to be different than the mitzvahs we have now. Is that what
No, he doesn't say that.
No,
He says we're going to give truma in the future.
So we're just going to give. Okay. So
No, like amongst all the mitzvahs, we're also going to have to do this mitzvah. You know, those mitzvahs are not batul. In the future, we learn from here in the name of Rabbi Yochanan.
Okay, so now I did understand.
You didn't.
No. Because
Okay, let me just do it one more time in as short as I can without a lot of fanfare. Rabbi Yosef learns from the fact that you can dress up this body in kilayim that there's no mitzvahs in the future because he's going to rise from the dead with it on and not a problem because he doesn't have any mitzvahs to do. We challenge him and we say, no, you can only eulogize in those garments. You cannot bury in those garments, says Abaya, right? And a few other people that tacked on with Abaya there, right? Which means there's an argument, no, there will be mitzvahs in the future. You cannot bury him. We then bring Rabbi Yochanan seemingly as a rebuttal to Abaya and to support Rabbi Yosef's original statement that you can even bury them, right, with these garments on, which seemingly is a sort of a proof from a previous Tana that no, there's mitzvahs are going to be bought in the future because you can even bury with these clothes on. So far it's simple. The problem is that when we go to the next stage and we give Rabbi Yochanan's reasoning why you can bury them. And he doesn't say because when he rises from the dead, there's not going to be mitzvahs. He says because when he's dead, he's not obligated to mitzvahs, which is not really a big deal, and it takes all the power out of bringing him as a support for Rabbi Yosef, right? Just before you go on, you have a question on that?
maybe you'll explain it when you move on.
Second problem, which is even a greater problem, so as far as we're understanding the Gemara over there in Nida, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yosef have the same opinion that mitzvahs are batelos in the future, even though Rabbi Yochanan was a little bit weak on his response, but he was brought at least as a support for this opinion. Yeah? Now we come from a Gemara of Sanhedrin where we see that he Beferish does not hold that. He learns that there's such a thing as resurrection from the dead from a scenario where there is mitzvahs taking place in that time of the resurrection. Namely, Aaron, and you're giving him truma, which means you're still busy with mitzvahs even after Techiyas HaMesim. And so he doesn't hold mitzvahs are batul in the future, clearly from his position in Sanhedrin. So now why would he be brought as a proof text to support Rav Yosef? First of all, his proof text kind of stinks because he wasn't even talking about the time of Techiyas HaMesim. Second of all, he holds mitzvahs are not batul in the future. So that's where the Rebbe is holding. He's just trying to understand the Gemara, just like we are.
So what is it, when the guy rises, he's supposed to just take off the shanez, or he's going to be sitting for like 10, 15 seconds before he takes it off?
According to Rabbi Yochanan, that there are mitzvahs in the future.
Yeah.
So that's we'll see. Yeah, seemingly he'll take it off.
And also, that also makes sense because like when we say, שבאנו בית המקדש שמרה בימינו כן קרקנו בתורתך לעשות עבודתך. I forget what it is. I forgot what it is. But it says we're going to do your avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. So if we're doing avodah in the Beit HaMikdash,
But that could be Yemos HaMashiach. Everyone agrees that in the before Techiyas HaMesim, right? There are mitzvahs. The question is after Techiyas HaMesim.
Okay.
Fine. Anyway, what do we hear from here? Shikaimu mitzvahs truma lach Techiyas HaMesim. There will be the mitzvah of truma, and all the mitzvahs after Techiyas HaMesim. Im kein, eich am Rabbi Yochanan afilu kovra. How did Rabbi Yochanan come with this statement? You could even bury him in these garments. When he stands up, he'll be wearing clothes that he's not allowed to wear. This is the question. Os he. We're moving on. Do you guys have the next page? 454? Here, let's pass it out. Okay. Os he. Yesh lomar. Let's get it all sorted out now. At least we understand how confused we are. That's a very good beginning to get unconfused. So Rabbi Yochanan Lataime, when it says Rabbi Yochanan in the original Sugya Nida, he says he goes according to his reasoning, where he says, since Kevan Shemeis Adam Naisa Chavshi Mina Mitzvahs, since the person is dead, he's free from the mitzvahs. Who gam bir behesbel ledivi Rabbi Yosef, Rav Yosef shemitzvahs b'teus lasid lavo. In other words, we're going to stick to our guns. First thing, let's get our trajectory down. We're going to hold the Gemara's Havamina, that Rabbi Yochanan is, in fact, giving a defense for Rav Yosef. In other words, let's just read the Gemara as it intends to be read. When Rabbi Yochanan comes back, he is defending the position that mitzvahs are batal in the future. Even though it seems like we brought two really good reasons why it doesn't make any sense, but let's just stay with the Gemara's line of reasoning. He was brought in order to bring a support for Rav Yosef. So, fine. But when he says that since the person's dead, he's free from the mitzvahs, this is true, even though he holds, according to Rav Yosef, that mitzvahs are batal in the future. Because, what does it mean, haperush, the mitzvahs b'telis lasid lavo? And finally, Rafi, we're going to get to the point, but there's a lot more of the sikha, so you'll see that it wasn't the end, as I thought it was. He says, mitzvahs are batal in the future, eino el benogeh latzivoy la'adam. He means something very specific. When it says mitzvahs are batal in the future, what he means is a certain definition of the word mitzvah, which is that it's a commandment to another person, to the man. Yeah, a tzivoy. Mitzvahs daika. In other words, shegedaram hu tzivoy la'adam. What is a mitzvah? Is that one person is issuing it to another person. Shekevan shemeis adam. Now, once the person passes away, la'acharei gamer avodasu b'kiyum mitzvahs, which means, when he passed away, here it means even the tchias hamesim concept, which means he's finished his work with the mitzvahs. Nasa adam chavshim min mitzvahs. Now we're saying the person is free from mitzvahs. What does that actually mean? Shegam ba'olam atachiyah. Even after, now when he's dead, even after he wakes up, he's free from mitzvahs. How does that go with what we said, that there's still going to be truma, etc.? What does it mean he's free from mitzvahs? In other words, after the whole period of finishing the job of refining the world, etc., it's time for Techias HaMesim, Ein alav tzivoy dekiyam mitzvahs. So he no longer has a commandment to fulfill the mitzvahs, but the existence of the mitzvahs as an eternal thing will still remain there. That's where we can, I'll explain in a second, that's where we can still maintain that these two seemingly contradictory statements of the sages. One, mitzvah omedes la'olam la'ol me'olamim, that mitzvahs are forever and will never go away, right? And what we said before, that mitzvahs b'teilus liolam, that mitzvahs are going to be nullified. How do they both go together? Because the mitzvahs that are going to stay in the future are not the same concept of God commanding this person to do it. Lo b'tor tzivoy le'adam, ele b'tor ratzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But rather, like the essential mitzvah will remain, but not the concept that the person is in a state of separateness receiving this mitzvah and therefore has to comply and do it. Well, how does that work? He's going to, for a little bit further explanation is required. Hageder the mitzvahs tzivoy adam. What does it mean nowadays, mitzvah? In other words, that there's a commandment to the person. Shayach rak k'sha'adam hu b'metzias b'fnei atzmo. A mitzvah that we have today is only relevant when there's the concept of a person experiencing himself as an independent agent. In fact, that's when it's relevant to say they're a mitzvah, right? I'm over here, says God, you're over there, you feel independent, and I'm asking you to do something with your independence. Use your free choice and your independent choice and fulfill my command. That's what it means that there's a mitzvah on the person as a commandment to the person. It's only relevant when the person feels himself as an independent. Then it's relevant to say that there's a category called us fulfilling the will of God. Aval. But once a person has fulfilled this entire work in the world by having done all those mitzvahs, and that's the idea of Techias HaMesim, it happens as the reward for doing all the mitzvahs, which means kol mitziyuso, kol apratim shabo, chadur b'ratzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. His entire being and every single thing about him is completely permeated with the will of God. He becomes in a situation, there's another meaning of the word mitzvah. It doesn't mean a command. What does mitzvah mean? It means to be singularly connected, right? Mitzvah melashon tzavtza v'chibur means to be joined. The word mitzvah can mean a command. When you use it in the meaning of command, it implies that there's two of you there. When you use it as the meaning of being joined, which means mitzvahs will never go away, but not because there's a command and there's two of you there, it's because the world has become so nullified that it doesn't experience itself anymore. And therefore there's just basically this notion of a mitzvah existing, there's no one to command anymore, because the experience of self and otherness is gone. But it doesn't mean the mitzvah is gone, it's basically this existence of this unification that will be there forever. Ad shenaisim metzias achaz. You become one with God. There's no one to command. As the statement of the Zohar says, Yisrael al yidei oraisa v'kucha brichu kul echad. That Yisrael oraisa v'kucha brichu kul echad. There's a statement that says the Jewish people, the Torah and God is one. The way he's learning it here is the Jewish people, through the fulfillment of the Torah that we'll have done in the days of now, become one with God, to the point that we will no longer experience ourselves as an independent entity, and therefore the concept of the first stage of mitzvahs to command us will be totally irrelevant. It doesn't mean that the fulfillment of mitzvahs and the ways of going in Hashem's ways and doing all those things will stop happening. So mitzvahs are not really batul in that sense, because all of the world will be fulfilling God's will. Remember we said the mitzvahs are God's intrinsic will. This is something He wants, and it's the way of the world, and it's never going to go away. It's as eternal as Hashem. But there's no one to tell anymore to do it, because we don't have an independent sense of self. We've already covered that. And now we're in the state of this reward where we become bound up and literally one with Hashem. Just like Hashem's doing the mitzvahs, we're automatically doing the mitzvahs. And so therefore mitzvahs will not be nullified. Right? But the command to the person will be nullified.
Would it be like a tzaddik doing a mitzvah?
Even a tzaddik has a certain sense of separateness. Right? A tzaddik is still before Tchias HaMesim. There's a difference between a tzaddik before and after Tchias HaMesim also. Because he's just in a world which has not reached that state.
How does that work with negative mitzvahs? Because if you're waking up wearing kilayim...
All right, we're going to get to that. We're getting to that point.
What, it's like Hashem's doing an Avera?
We're getting right to that point. You'll be getting this answer in a minute.
He's not transgressing, right?
Hold on, he's going to answer. Let's get there. So he says, and this will be in the future. This is what's going to be a singularity. No more God and you. Therefore, lo shayach haged tzivoy la'adam. The notion of mitzvah as a commandment to the other is gone. And that's what it means, mitzvahs betelis, lasilava. Betelis, right? In a certain sense, we can totally say there will be no more mitzvahs in the sense of a command to the person. There's no one to command. But rather, you are the existence of God. You are like His walking will. Shebavadim is kaim b'poel, b'derech mela al yedei metzias da mitzvahs. In other words, but the mitzvahs are not going to go away. On the contrary, the mitzvahs are going to be how you walk through the world as being completely singularly one with God. Hashem also does the mitzvahs, and since you are Hashem, you're going to be a walking mitzvah doer. So mitzvahs are not batul, and mitzvahs are batul. It depends how you understand the word mitzvah. You following?
Seems like the same type of thing as what the Rebbe Rashab said.
We're going to get to the Rebbe Rashab also. He's going to return to that. But in the meantime, he says, there's evidence of this, for example, when it says in the future, a date, footnote number 42, will scream, when you're going to go grab a date on Shabbos, right? It says the date will scream out and tell you, Shabbos hayom. Don't eat me, says the date. It's Shabbos. You're not going to have a way of not doing the mitzvahs. Because even the dates will tell you that it's Shabbos. Right? The whole world will just be in a state of mitzvah performance without having to free choose it. Right? So basically the Rebbe has given the answer that we were searching for up until now. We had two contradictory divrei chazal, right? One is the mitzvahs are batul in the future, and one is that the oral Torah is something that can never go away, and it's nitzchi, and it's li'olam and li'ol me'olamim. I can reside. Because yes, mitzvahs will be batul, and simultaneously they'll never change, because we just mean a certain type of mitzvah will be batul. The concept of separateness.
If you're picking up a date on Shabbos, it could be that the problem is it's nolad, right?
I think he's talking about like plucking it.
Okay, but like let's say you find a date on the floor, The problem is like it could have fallen on Shabbos. In that stage, would they? I don't know if this is like going off topic, but would you because it's a zero, you won't know if it fell on Shabbos or not on Shabbos here because like everyone's trying to do the Ratzon Hashem because they tell you no, I'm good. I felt good for Shabbos.
Right.
The
Again,
devil
not
says,
even
"Fix my
trying to do the Ratzon Hashem. You're going to not be able to not do the Ratzon Hashem,
Right.
and therefore, yes, the date will reveal its true nature, and it will not. And yeah.
So in a way, we'll have way less stringency also, right?
And
There's
we're
no
more friends.
stringency, not stringency. It's basically a world almost like the world of the angels. It will be in a state of perfection of God's will without any notion of someone having a choice whether to do it or not. Right? Free choice basically will disappear because the free choice only is possible if there is someone to choose. Right? So it's just going to all go in perfect ways of God. Al pizeh, accordingly. Maturetzes hastira shebedivrei Rabbi Yochanan. Oh, let's go back to Rabbi Yochanan. We want to bring this all back to the Gemara. We don't have time.
There's always time.